Latibola here, and today we are going to be making a card using the Get Well gang and the Sunshine's Layers dies, but I didn't know I was going to use that until later, so I'm not showing it to you in the beginning. So I already have all my stamps on my blocks, so you can't see them there. Your set, if you order it, would not look like that. That's just because I'm on the design team, so it's a sample set. I'm going to be using some Copic Safe ink. It's Intense Black by Simon Says Stamp. I'm just trying to get a rough idea of where, no pun intended, rough idea. I'm funny. Anyway, where I want my dog to go because I'm doing a one layer panel. So I'm going to be doing some stamping and masking. This is not shocking news to you, I'm sure, if you've watched any of my other cards on my channel or for W+9. So I'm just going to stamp and mask as I go and kind of build up my scene. In the Get Well gang, there's a bunch of different images which are all completely adorable, and they have this little sick puppy who's laying on the pillow, and then this other that's a doctor puppy, and I thought that they would be super cute to be paired together, and with the sentiment that says it's a bad case of missing you, which I think is absolutely wonderful, and I would love to send that to my crafty friends. So I was like, yeah, I gotta use this. So in my head, I kind of saw this as a scene in like a living room or whatever, and I wanted them to be laying on a rug. Illustrator I am not, so this is just kind of like me roughly drawing out what it's going to look like. I'm using a thinner point pen, so that way I can clean up the edges when I re-outline everything at the end of my card like I always do. But I'm just putting them like on a little oval rug to kind of complete the scene. That's just what I saw in my head, so I went with it. This isn't obviously something that you would need to do, just how I envisioned it. So since I saw it as like a living room, family room type scene, I decided to do some ink blending in the background. I'm using full back sticky post-it notes. It's also what I use to make my masks. And I'm going to put those down so I can get just a clear one color on top, one color on bottom. I'm using cracked pistachio, and I kept it darker toward the post-it notes and kind of lighter toward the top. Once I was done with that, I removed those post-it notes and then just flipped them around to do the carpet area, the floor. I thought about for 1 second doing like wood panels, but then I was like, it's probably going to be too much. So I just picked frayed burlap, which I thought was a good neutral. And then after I took the masks off, I was like, you just put green and brown together, Kelly. What are you doing? So I was trying to break out of my comfort zone, and then I realized that it kind of wasn't my scene. But we're gonna roll with it because I don't start over again. So I decided it would maybe be a little easier if I put in a little bit of woodwork. So I busted out my T-square ruler and my Copic Safe pen to just draw 2 little lines, and I'm going to use that to create some trim. I picked the E20 family because it's not one that I normally use. Like I said, I was trying to kind of push my comfort zone. And so for the woodwork, I just went with the E25, and then I'm going to do just a couple little detail strokes with the E27. Nothing too terribly fancy. You wouldn't see a ton of detail with it being set farther behind. So I'm just doing a little something so it doesn't look just like a plain brown strip. Then we're going to go to coloring the main images. Now, the way that it looks right now is when I decided that brown and green were not going to be friends. That I was going to have to do something about that. But I'm pushing it to the back, moving on with the coloring so I can make a decision about how the card's going to look completely. So I went ahead and colored his snout lighter and did very minimal shading where his head is kind of tucked underneath his arm. And then I filled in the rest of his body with the lightest color. I knew I wasn't going to have any severe highlights on him, so it was safe to just go ahead and color the whole thing in. For everything else, I'm going to be doing the feathering technique. So I'm going to be using a light hand and just kind of feathering those colors together. This particular image, he's all kind of curled up. So there's going to be some different areas for the shading. He has one paw, which you can barely see, that's tucked up underneath his head. Then he has the paw that is in front of his face, but it's also buried in the pillow. So there's going to be shading for where the pillow comes up over that paw. And then where his body is, his outside leg is going to cast a shadow onto his belly. So when I started with my lightest color, that's where I mapped my shadows for. And then from there, I'm just building up out to my darkest color in the same exact areas. For some of the areas that are smaller, like his paw in front of his face, I'm just doing a line of color. Same thing with his ears. For the other areas, his face and his body, I am using that feathering technique. One of the things that I like to do when I have a rounded highlighted area, like his little booty there, like where his thigh comes up, I like to extend that line out with my darkest color. It just gives it a little bit more depth than just a straight black line. Once I go out to my darkest color, I come back into my lightest, and then for this one, I really just only kind of hit the areas where it was going to be highlighted. For his nose, I stuck with the C9s. I'm going to make it black, but we do that with grays. So I colored the whole thing in with a C3, then added a bit of shading with a C5, and then just a dot of the C9, and it'll give his nose appearance of being black with a highlight on the edge. I wanted the pillow to be purple. I thought that cracked pistachio and the brown combination would look good with like a bright, vivid purple, just, to bring in some pop of color. So again, there's a lot of areas to shade here, and like with the tissue box in front, but then also with just him laying on it. Even if you just stamped it and you put nothing in front of him, there's a lot of different areas to add shading to and get really good depth with just a like simple, cute stamp. So wherever he's kind of pushing the pillow down would be a shaded area, and wherever his weight is plumping the pillow up would be a highlight area. Also, I shaded behind the tissue box because that would not be a highlight area with the tissue box in front of it. For the rug, I opted to go with yellows. They are complementary to green, but then they're complementary to purple, but then they also work well with a green or a teal color. I kept it more on the desaturated side. I didn't go with as bright of a yellow like a lemon yellow. I kept it more like with an orange base. I was actually pretty happy with how that color combination turned out. You've heard me talk before about mixing your color families, and this is a perfect example because I'm using two Y's, a YR, and an E. That's the color of the rug. And another thing to note is when you're picking Copic colors, make sure that you're looking at the actual color and not at the caps, because you can see the color I'm putting down here versus the color that the cap is. The cap would lead you to believe that this is a super bright color, and it's not. So pay attention to those things too when you're picking colors. I'm putting in shadows wherever the doctor dog is standing, where the other dog is sitting, and then the back area of the rug would be darker, so it kind of falls to the background, and the lighter areas up front to bring that forward. Those things are just going to work well for the depth of the card, like what makes sense. And again, lightest to darkest, darkest to lightest. And then we're going to do the stripe in the middle. I opted to go with warm colors. The reason I opted to go with warm colors is because I am trying to push outside of that comfort zone. And I always go for the C9s. Always. That's where I'm happy. I like that they're more blue and they're less brown. But I thought for this particular combination, because I went with a desaturated yellow, I thought the warmer grays would work better. So I did that. I really added just a little teeny tiny bit of the W5. I didn't want it to be a super dark rug. Like I didn't want to look like he was laying on a dirty rug. So I kept that little stripe pretty light. I used those same warm grays to color the Dr. puppy. This is just Dawn, when we talk about color, just as friends, like crafty girlfriends, just chatting, she always tells me that mixing warm and cool colors make your card more interesting. And you can see, I mean, her cards are just absolutely stunning. So I'm like, why wouldn't I want to try to do that? Like, why wouldn't I want to take that advice? So I'm trying to, in branching out, do that, kind of mix my tones as well as pick good color combinations. So just something for you to think about, maybe. Maybe that advice would be helpful to you as well. So here I'm doing him whitish gray. He got a little darker than I intended, I'm not gonna lie. I might have got a little heavy-handed with the W5. I'm not unhappy with the way he came out. It just wasn't the way I originally saw him. So I tried to add in just a little bit of shading, like so his ears would be set back, underneath that arm that's up over his face, underneath his other arm, like where his little doggy armpit would be. I think they're still called armpits on dogs, right? The inside of his legs would be a bit darker, and there's going to be some shading underneath the tools of the trade that he has on there, the little headlight light lamp. I don't, whatever that is, and the stethoscope. There'd be a little bit of shading for that too. I decided that the color scheme needed a little bit more of this teal. Right now everything was kind of disjointed. It wasn't really making sense. So I'm just going to bring in that teal color just a couple of different places. When you're doing a card, it's more appealing to do things in odd numbers. So I decided that I was going to, the wall would be teal, the tissue box would be teal, and then his little accents on his stethoscope and the headlight would be teal, and that would give me that visual triangle. For the tissues, I want them to be white. I know they have colored tissues, but that, I don't know, that just seemed weird to me. I wanted them to be white. So I'm going to add just minimal shading with that sea, with the lighter sea colors. And make sure anytime you're coloring anything white, you want to make sure you leave some white area. You're just filling in the shadows. So you want to be super light-handed when you're doing these. And then I'm also going to use those same seas to color in the metal portion of his gear. So I tried to leave highlights when you're doing the round objects. Make sure your highlights match. So it doesn't matter where you decide to put them. If you want the highlights to be on the top and the bottom, totally fine. If you want them to be on the left and the right, also totally fine. But when you have two round objects together like this on the same card, the highlight should be in the same area. So if you went with the top and bottom, then stick with the top and bottom. If you go with the left or right, then stick with the left or right. So now that that is all done, now I'm going to fix this background because I just wasn't happy with the way that it looked. I say fix like it was broken. I guess just enhance it. It wasn't broken. It just wasn't what I would like because I had really strong colors for my images and really pastel color for my background. And then I had that brown stripe. So I decided I would go back in with the Copics, and since they already matched, and I would just add some shading from the trim up. I wasn't super happy with the way that it blended, but I'm not going to lie, I was also a little impatient with it. So, and then I just picked another E that I felt matched that frayed burlap to add in some shading from the trim down onto the carpet. And I was much happier with the way that looked with the stronger colors than the super pastel background. White gel pen is my friend, and I used it a ton to add details to this card. So I added a little bit of shine to both of their noses, and then the headlamp and the stethoscope. I'm also going to add a pattern to this pillow. I love to do this with the white gel pen. It's just something that you can do to make your card very interesting. So I just added stripes. When you're adding stripes to something that is not flat, you have to kind of stagger the lines. Like the lines wouldn't be perfectly straight because the pillow is being pushed around. Also, another thing that you can do is go back in with like your lightest Copic color and kind of add that back in where the shading would be so the white isn't as strong. They say it can ruin your Copic nib, so do that at your own risk. I always do it. I've never had an issue. I also wanted to add some detail like wallpaper to the background because I thought it would make it more interesting. So I used the white gel pen to add polka dots. Yes, I polka dotted that whole thing. No, I'm not a crazy person. I always re-outline all of my images because I feel like it just makes them pop. And then that's also going to give me a chance to fix any of my weird lines for that. So I'm all done with the coloring. I'm going to use the largest die from the Sunshine Layers die because I just felt like those little scallops would be so cute with those little polka dots. And it was just like cute, 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 cute everywhere on this card. So I loved the little panel. I love the way that that came out. And it's that little stitch detail, which is also like totally charming. The sentiment, like I told you earlier, says it's a bad case of missing you. And I'm going to stamp that in W+9 pure black ink. It is super crisp black ink. It's one of my favorite ones for stamping sentiments. And I'm using my Mini Misty to do that because I already colored this panel and I don't want to mess up the sentiment. Normally I don't do that many layers on cards, but I just felt like I really wanted a pop of that teal in the background. So I found some cardstock. I cut it down to just, my card base is regular A2 size, so it's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So I cut my card panel down to 4 by 5 1/4, and then I'm going to put this panel also on top. It'd be super cute to like pop it up, but I just decided that I'm actually going to mail this one, so I just decided to do it flat. And of course we can't have a card without some shimmer, so I added just a little bit of that to the pillow, their noses, and things like that. That is the entire card. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Thank you so much for joining me. Bye.